Okay, I think we'll get started. We've a rich program today, and I don't want to take up more of people's time with starting on Irish time, so we'll start now. As I said, my name is Kevin Byrne. I'm the Consul General here at the Consulate in Chicago. I want to thank you all for joining us today for the second in our Design Month series, Crafting the Future, Women in Irish Design Today. A little bit about the series. Every year, embassies and consulates right around the world celebrate St Brigid's Day, and it's a chance for us to reflect on the contributions of Irish women at home and abroad to Ireland, our culture, our arts, and our people. We wanted to focus in on design and creativity this month, and we found that there was just too much for one day, so we've extended it out into a series of 4 events over the course of February. Our first event was last week. It was with Marty Fahey, and he talked about the past and the past contribution of Irish women in arts and design. That was a great overview for many. This session is very exciting. We're looking at the present and future of women in Irish design today. It's a really rich discussion. You're really going to enjoy it. Next week, we look at architecture and the contribution of Irish women in the field of architecture. That's the Chicago Architecture Centre, and that looks at the contributions of Shelley McNamara and Yvonne Farrell, the Pritzker Prize winning Irish architects. And then the final session is on the 25th, Thursday 25th, and that looks at the contribution of Mother Jones, the labour rights activist from Cork, here at the turn of the century. The reason we wanted to focus in on design is because design is really an expression of who we are. It's a way of telling our story in forms rather than in words. And I think from the session today, you'll really hear some of those stories loud and clear. We're very lucky to have a wonderful panel. I'll let our moderator introduce them to you, but it's my honor to introduce our moderator today, who is Nora Gainer. She's the Director of Civic Relations and Partnerships at the Art Institute of Chicago, where she cultivates creative partnerships throughout the city of Chicago and Illinois, and reinforces the museum's role as an integral part of the daily fabric of the city's life. Her work reaches tourists and locals alike, ensuring that the Art Institute remains the top destination in Chicago for visitors from all around the world. In overseeing the museum's strategic planning and relationships for civic, cultural, and tourism partners, her leadership has grown tourism program revenue by 1,000% in the past 5 years, a really laudable figure. Other significant achievements include the development of the museum's China Ready program, as well as the creation of the innovative Project Windows, which increases visibility of significant Art Institute exhibitions with key retail partners throughout the city. Nora graduated from the University of Illinois, where a year in Italy inspired her lifelong love affair with all things Italian. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Nora, and she'll introduce you to our wonderful panelists. Thank you very much. Nora, you're muted, I think.
There we go. Yeah, there has to be one on every Zoom. Thank you, Kevin. I think it's so appropriate that the Chicago office is honoring St Brigid, the women of Ireland, as we have a long history of cross-pollination with Ireland, of notable women through immigration, both immigration and emigration, from labor rights and social justice rock star Mother Jones, who Kevin mentioned earlier, to our very own Chicagoan, Hazel Martin, AKA Lady Lavery, who for 50 years was the face of the Irish banknote. So continuing the theme of rockstar women, I'm honored to be in conversation today with 2 wonderful jewelers and artists, Selena Coyle and Anne-Marie Reinhold, whose work exemplifies the innovation, creativity, and artistry of Irish design. It's been a privilege to get to know them and their work, and I look forward to our discussion. We've set aside time to take questions towards the end, so please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen and don't be shy. But before I introduce the artists, we have with us a representative. Would you like to Ciara, introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Ciara Garvey. Thanks very much, Nora. I'm the Development Manager of Collector and Tourism Programs at Design and Crafts Council Ireland. So do you want me, will I just start my little overview now? Or
Sure.
Great,
Sure.
great. Okay, well, firstly, thanks very much to everybody, Kevin, Sandra and Sarah, and of course you, Nora, for organising this. It's a really wonderful series and we're all delighted to be involved in it. So I'll just share my screen here. So is this coming up okay? Great. So we are the Design and Crafts Council Ireland. We are the national agency for the commercial development of Ireland's craft and design sector. And we're actually celebrating our 50th year this year. So we're based in Kilkenny. We're housed in the studios, the old studios of the Kilkenny Design Workshops, which was a fantastic initiative set up by the government 60 years ago, which really tried to raise the standards of Irish design by bringing over Scandinavian experts to Ireland to integrate into the design society and culture in order to really bring up the standards that are there and have continued since. So this is, I'll just, I guess when you or any of the audience here, when you think of Irish design and craft, you probably make automatic associations and assumptions for a lot of the things and practices which Ireland is really known for, like basketry or glass or pottery or textiles. And you'd be right, like these are things that Ireland does really stand out with in terms of making. And they're all really, really important to our craft and design economy, but they do also really matter in terms of our heritage and our culture, because a lot of them are very much community based. They've either developed through communities or through families and generations over time. So say the image there on the left is of Joe Hogan, a famous basket maker who learned his craft through learning from different communities throughout Ireland over the 70s. The maker in the middle is a glass maker in County Waterford. He used to work for Waterford Crystal Glass, but then went out on his own in the 80s and set up a wonderful business, which is continuing on the glass tradition in County Waterford. The two makers on the right, the guy on the far right is actually American, a potter who moved over to Ireland and makes wonderful work, but the person on the left is a rug maker in County Wexford, and again he's continued on a tradition of rug making by becoming an apprentice to the original rug maker of the business that he runs, Cadogan Rugs, which a lot of our embassy network have been very good about acquiring for some of the embassy network around the world. So I'll just quickly run through our what we do before we get into the discussion. So we're predominantly a support-based organisation, but we do have a lot of consumer-facing initiatives as well. And like everywhere else, the business of making for our makers has really been hugely challenged over the last year or so. So we have had to respond and adapt to those challenges as well. So a lot of the supports that we have offered in the past have changed, and we've also introduced new ones to address all of those challenges. So one of them is webinars. This isn't something we used to do before, but last March, basically at the start of the pandemic, we kick-started a series of webinars that used to be 3 a week, and now it's down to 1 a week, but they're all extremely informative, very much geared towards the challenges that makers face. And this is open to all our members. We have around over 3,000 clients at the moment, and this is any of the webinars that we've been holding are all ones which address various aspects of their practice, whether it's financial issues or artistic development or strategy, digital marketing using Instagram tools and all of that. So say today we had one on Brexit and the challenges that that some people face for the export side of their businesses. We have a program called Design Ireland, which I'll be talking about again at the end of the discussion here today. But this is just to say, this is our consumer-facing website, which represents and showcases Ireland's best retail makers who are producing wonderful works, gifts like candles, textiles, jewellery, and these are all businesses that people can buy from directly. These all have their own e-commerce setups, and they were all selected by an expert panel of industry experts. So the quality that you'll see on this website is fantastic. Along with that, again, responding to the challenges of COVID, we have set up this new digital campaign called Made Local. We started it last summer to go along with our Design Ireland initiative, but it's not just for businesses who are selling online. It also is for any of our makers who have Instagram or Facebook. So it's a hashtag where makers could connect in. It was connecting using the hashtag Made Local. So it created a type of community all at the one time. But what was great about this was we launched it last July to connect in with the staycation market, which was kind of a new thing that happened here, and in a more pronounced way because of COVID. Like, more Irish people were obviously have to stay in holiday local when conditions allowed for that. But this campaign made it easier for people to find out more about what was being made in their communities and go and find out about it and buy. So we continued this campaign on through last Christmas, and it's one we're going to be continuing on with this year as well. So another program that we have that I am involved in is the portfolio program, and this is one that Seliena and Anne-Marie are a part of as well. This is dcci.ie portfolio, where we showcase Ireland's very best designer makers who are producing gallery-led work. So what this program aims to achieve is connect our makers with relevant audiences such as galleries, curators, museums, and we do this through a number of ways. Through exhibitions, we have a publication, we have a website, we're developing a digital campaign with this too, and we also have a number of collections and funds. One is actually with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, where we acquire works for embassies worldwide, and we also work with the National Museum of Ireland on a joint collection as well, and this is to collect and acquire the antiques of the future. So they're accessed from makers who are making right now. So it's makers like Seliena and Anne-Marie who are, people who are put forward for this kind of initiative. So last year, again, because of COVID, we couldn't run this, but we did it in the way we have done it because curators couldn't go to studios and see work. So we changed around how we did things, and we used the money for a call out for a response to COVID for a piece which would become part of the permanent collection in the National Museum Decorative Arts division in Dublin, and Anne-Marie was the winner. So that's how the connection with this aspect was made. So we're really excited and delighted about seeing her work. We know what she plans to do, and we're looking forward to seeing it when it's finally made in May. So another aspect of what we do, which also connects in with Seliena and Anne-Marie, we have two schools which we are developing into centres of excellence. One is in ceramics and the other is in jewellery skills, and they're both in Kilkenny, and both Seliena and Anne-Marie are graduates of those as well. And we also do a lot of education outreach work ourselves, where we work with educators in second level and third level, trying to create understanding and appreciation of craft, what it does and what it can do as a potential career for people. We have the National Design and Craft Gallery in Kilkenny. Again, it's had to adapt and shift as to how things have been done. A lot of the exhibitions couldn't take place physically last year, so it's gone, some aspects have gone digital and other aspects have gone out into the community. We've had outdoors exhibitions where beforehand they would all have had to be indoors, and even the next exhibitions coming up later on this year, we're really actively engaging with people, the Irish community, to try to get them involved as well in what gets selected for some of our exhibitions. So I mentioned earlier, we're 50 this year. We're doing a call out to everybody to ask them to nominate their Irish craft hero, because we really want to acknowledge and celebrate the best craft makers and who has really made a contribution to Irish craft and design over the last 5 decades. So another aspect finally is well-being, which has again a response to COVID and the importance of craft and design to communities and society, because we've been really looking at how we can harness craft and the artistic side of craft and design in order to use it in communities for people to use for their own well-being and mental health. So we have had, last year we had a program called Get Ireland Making, where we commissioned videos that we got some of our makers to do instructional videos so that people would be able to learn something, because we've found that so many people have said that they benefit so much from this, from learning something new and from getting absorbed in an activity. But it's ageless. It doesn't just have to be children or school going. This can happen at any age or stage of people's life. So the images there on the top from Keep Well is a new campaign that the Irish government has launched, and we are part of it in terms of the creativity aspect and how creativity can really help with the nation's well-being during this time. So in terms of the Keep Well and what we're doing, we had a call out to our membership to do initiatives as a response to this, and they're going to get working on making them now. But a lot of them are going to be reaching out into the communities so the public can get involved in this too. And our own gallery is going to be launching a series of outreach activities with a lot of these projects in mind too. So it's widening the remit of craft and our own remit and what it can do. So so that's essentially it. That's my whistle stop overview. So thanks for that.
Thanks so much, Ciara. I continue to be so incredibly inspired and impressed with the way that the Irish government and the work that you're doing at the DCCI in ensuring that that Ireland continues to nourish its citizens through arts and culture. And it's such an investment, and it is now my pleasure to introduce 2 incredible women who have benefited from that environment, and who will also share a bit about their work, and then we will have a great conversation. So I'm going to kick off with Selena. Selena Coyle is an artist and an educator with over 25 years experience, which you would never know from her youthful appearance. She is a proud Derry girl and studied jewelry and silversmithing at Duncan of Jordanstone College of Art, Dundee, before joining the intensive jewelry training program mentioned by Ciara in her remarks that is facilitated by the Craft Council in Ireland, of Ireland in Kilkenny. She went on to complete an MFA here in the Midwest at Indiana University in Bloomington, and further training with the Crafts Council of Ireland in their Craft and Design Business Development Program. In 2000, she established a workshop of her own in her hometown of Derry, and has held several teaching positions, including Professor of Metals and Jewelry at Savannah College of Art and Design, and Head of Metals, I love these titles, at the National College of Art and Design in Dublin. Seliena has participated in numerous national and international exhibitions, and her current work has moved from the body to the wall in an exciting and radical shift to her practice. Welcome, Seliena.
Hi, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here, and I'm thankful for the invitation from the Crafts Council, Design and Crafts Council, to do this. I am just going to give a quick overview of that 25 years career. It's been long, and I've achieved quite a lot in that time. And I've had a lot of opportunities, several with the Crafts Council or the designing. Forgive me if I say Crafts Council, I've been with them that long that they were the Crafts Council, the Design and Crafts Council as it is now. So if you just even want to move to the next slide, I haven't really included work prior to my master's. First of all, because we weren't in a generation where we documented it very well. So, but also I just wanted to go through what has brought me to the work that I'm currently doing, because there's quite a seismic shift, as mentioned by Nora, in my practice. So this is my MFA work, which, as Nora said, I got a great opportunity. I had done my degree in Dundee and left with great creativity, but skill-wise, it was a lot to be desired. So when an opportunity came up to join the jewelry skills course, which was in its first year at Kilkenny in the design workshops, I had known about Kilkenny design workshops since I was in school, and I remember being at the FLA in Kilkenny and looking in through the gates and saying, I really want to go there. So when that opportunity came up to join the jewelry skills course, I would say I jumped at it. I was a bit, what do you mean I need to improve my skills? But it's probably the best thing I ever did. The tutor at the time was Jane Houston. And along this journey, you're going to hear me mention several women. And in my life and my career, I've had the benefit of advice and mentorship from such amazing women. Jane was one of the first, and she really just opened opportunities. So why I'm mentioning her is she's the reason why I ended up going to Indiana. I never thought that somebody from Derry would get an opportunity. At the time, it's probably more common now. At the time, there weren't many Irish people doing their masters, let alone doing their masters in America. I knew a few people who went to the Royal College, and I just wasn't something I wanted to do. So when the idea came up, I kind of notioned it to Jane, and she straight away, she was so positive. Right, let's get a letter written, get on it, girl. So that's how I ended up. I wrote off, I was offered a scholarship, I jumped at it, and it was one of the best 3 years of my life. The experience was more than the work you see on screen. I got an opportunity to teach, and I don't think if I did my master's in the UK or Ireland, I would have had that opportunity. So my career really was that axis of Jane, that course in Kilkenny. My master's in Indiana changed everything. So on completion of that, I had always wanted to come back and do the business course. It doesn't exist anymore with the Crafts Council, but at the time it was an incubation. So it was for graduates who they were given a space in that lovely courtyard that you see. So it was different makers. There was a couple of jewelers, ceramics, illustrator, there was different crafts there, and we all had a space and mentorship and support. And, you know, at the time that really was unique. There's not many places that were offering that. So that's where I suppose the idea of commerciality and opportunities were afforded us to do the project that's on screen was called The Art of Gold. And this was one of the first leaps that the Crafts Council made into taking art jewelry from Ireland and going to Munich, to these big international trade fairs. I think we went to Las Vegas. I mean, it was really quite amazing. So Commerciality, it doesn't really sit with me very well. I mean, I think in my heart, I loved what I made in Indiana and that idea of fine art and art jewelry. So I did try though. So the commercial aspect, it was about setting up a business. It gave you that support and the knowledge you needed to have a workshop, do your taxes, promote yourself, get press, all of that stuff. So again, it was invaluable training from the Crafts Council. So if we can move on. So I just wanted to put in, because again, it's kind of pivotal to my career. The teaching at Savannah, I was back home working and this opportunity came up to look for a teaching job, and Savannah just was very exotic. The idea of going back to, I mean, I really love America, so going back to America was very appealing. So I spent 3 years there, and to be honest, the only reason I came home is because the job at the National College of Art and Design came up, and someone, I think it was Jane again, actually, woman supporting woman. It's great, but she kind of gave me a heads up that there was a temporary job coming up there. So I ended up coming home in 2006 and spending 3 years at the National College of Art and Design. And again, teaching was, we're going to talk, Nora and I will probably talk later about the influence of being away and coming back. I found it very impactful coming back to Ireland. I came back to Ireland when the Celtic Tiger was in its dying days. It was still roaring a little bit, but it was at the end, but before the decline in the markets and everything kind of went a little bit pear-shaped. But what I found was globalization had a big impact on how we saw ourselves, I think. And I'm a fan. I've been to many countries. I've had time in America. I've spent time in other countries. I'm all for it. But I had an experience with my students where I took them to the National Museum. And I have to admit, I'm from Derry. I went to college in Belfast and then Scotland. I had never been to the National Museum. I know that may sound shocking, but I had never been there. And I brought the students from NCAD, from the National College of Art and Design, we were going to do a project. And if you've ever been, it's a beautiful building. And if you've never been and you're ever in Ireland, you have to go. It's amazing. And there's a large rotunda on the entrance of the museum. And we stood there. It was 6 girls. They're wonderful girls, but they stood and I said, we're going to go in now. And they all looked at me and said, oh, really? Do we have to? We've seen this so many times. And I thought, okay, you're adults. I can't make you do something you don't want to do. So I let them go back. The project's still due. And I went in and I had such a visceral reaction to the work there. Not just the jewelry work, which is absolutely amazing, but the whole experience of the museum and other objects that are there from hoards, from gold hoards. The Broiter hoard was actually found in County Derry, so there's a connection there. And also they have 2 bog bodies, which if you've never seen, there was a serious visceral connection with that, because you were eyeballing your ancestors, and you can see the way the bodies have been protected in the bog. You can see their fingerprints. They're really quite remarkable. So I embarked on a series of work dedicated to these mythological queens that we've always heard about in stories, and they have been mythologized, and they're all very strong women. And Seamus Heaney, who's an internationally known poet, is also from Derry. Derry is such a great place. And he had written a poem dedicated to the Bogland Queen. And it was just really inspiring to think that I really wanted to honor these women. And it's not that they've been written out of history, but we think of Cuchulainn and we think of the men and all the fights that they got into, and the warrior and the high kings of Ulster and all of these stories we grew up with. And I wanted to kind of eulogize the women, the strong, impactful women. So I made a series of funereal, they're black, they incorporate the bog oak. So this is oak that has been taken from the bog, and the anaerobic, the reaction the bog has on the wood, it becomes really, really dense and black. It's a really beautiful material. But I also wanted to create an Irish aesthetic, not relying on cliche, the claddagh ring, the shamrock. As soon as you say you make Irish jewelry, there's an assumption people have. So this is the series of work, and I love this series. It was a reaction to coming home, to being away, to the women in my life, the impact they had, and the fact that these women are who I wanted to commemorate and celebrate. So if you want to move on in the next slide. So a few other things happened between that time and now that really have impacted where the shift happened with my work. In 2013, Derry was named UK City of Culture. And as you may or may not know, that created a little bit of tension because it's just because it's where it is geographically and the history that we have. But Derry really embraced it. And I was asked to help curate an exhibition that could happen during that period. So I just ran with it. It was an opportunity that I really, really just relished. So I asked 32 Irish-based makers. They weren't all Irish, but everybody was based on the island of Ireland. And to question, I asked them the question, did they think their culture impacted the work they made? So the resulting exhibition was really wonderful. And we have a catalog, and there's information online if you want to check out my website. Really wonderful. President Higgins was up in Derry and he opened it for us. It was a really exciting project, and we had a community aspect because now that I'm back home in Derry, that's really how I make my money. I do a lot of community work and artwork. So that got me thinking completely differently. That curatorship was a different way of thinking, but it also, I'd been teaching for so long, I kind of left behind. I didn't get such an opportunity to do projects like this. So this really got me reinvigorated in the craft community on the island. So if you want to move to the next slide. The following year, it had been such a success. The following year, the local council then asked me to curate a second project. And this project was much bigger. And this is where the connection between Ireland and Derry comes to fruition, I suppose. I had always been intrigued by the art of Boris Bally, who you may or may not know is based in Rhode Island, in Providence, Rhode Island, and he reuses street signage to make furniture. His work is amazing. You probably know of his work. And I asked him, would he come and be part of a month-long project where he would come to the city, work with groups from the city, and they would make street furniture. We decided on a theme, and it would be street furniture. And if you know Ireland at all, or the north of Ireland, we have the Giant's Causeway. So you can see that the seating is based on that hexagonal stone formation that the Giant's Causeway is famous for. So they made this work, and it was, as a team, it was a wonderful experience. And I'm a lifelong friend with Boris now. I think he loved his experience here. I'll speak for him. And there was some community involvement. So my part in the project was I worked with groups of older women and some younger women, but it was mostly older women. And we made this metallic quilt that was outside of the exhibition space. And then there was also an exhibition that went alongside it where I asked international makers, David Clark, Bettina Speckner, Matt Smith, to name but three, whose work involves reusing found objects or repurposes an object. So there was an exhibition, there was a community involved. It was just a very fulfilled project. It was really well-rounded, and the community really got involved. So all of this really got me, I was right back in it again. And in 2015, I suppose a major thing happened. I won 2 awards. I won an award that's based in Belfast. It was really for young people. I say young people, younger, who have had an impact on their community, and the Golden Fleece Award. For those of you who don't know, it's one of the major awards in Ireland that you can win as a maker or as an artist. Actually, it's for both. And they allowed me to come back to my practice full time. So that's when I really kind of reinvested myself full time. I'd obviously held down a job at the college. I maintained a different job at the college, and I was going between Derry and Dublin, and it just wasn't working. So this was a pivotal moment when I decided I was going to come home and invest myself in my practice full time. So then I think it comes to the other thing that happened in this period of time was I started applying for residencies. And because I was back at home in my workshop and the other way, you know, making some money through my art, insofar as I would lead workshops in the community with community groups, and pinhole photography has been something I've always been interested in, and I've always done with groups. So I applied to this Eastport, the Tides Institute, and it really was a wonderful residency. It was wonderful. Anyone who you should apply, it's a wonderful residency. And I had a great experience there. And it really is when this kind of started kicking off the idea of narrative. And that's this idea, the idea was that people came, I was re-engaging people with the idea of making a photograph, because we're so disconnected with it in our cameras and our phones now. So this was, I set up a darkroom, pinhole photography. They made it, they posed for it, they brought it in, they developed it. And some people had, or most didn't have that experience. So, and then the idea was that they were transferred, the image was transferred onto like a ceramic brooch form. And it was that play on the cameo and image making and bringing the things together. But it was, for me, it was started me thinking about the narrative and telling stories through image. So I think the next slide is, yeah, it developed then. I went to Vermont to a residency at the Vermont Studio Center. And I also had started experimenting with cyanotype. And it's a really wonderful process, and it's low tech. So insofar as pinholes low tech, you couldn't get any more low tech. It's an empty box. Cyanotype is equally that low tech, and I love that approach. I love the democracy of it. I love the fact that you can involve anyone. They don't need to have experience. So I combined it with the made here, the self-made, the self-image, and then the made here. So I started making images from the environment that I was in. And it happened to snow when I was there. So I got these beautiful, stark black and white pinhole images that I transferred into cyanotype and then applied them to these small units. The jeweler in me comes out all the time. So the scale has kind of retained that kind of intimacy. But again, this was starting to move into the small wall-based artwork. And I think that brings me up to, so the project self-made, made here, I have brought to several places, and Norway was the last place I went. So that was very different type of people though. So that was a different experience. And that brings me kind of up to current day. And this was a real seismic shift for me, because I had always made jewelry, art jewelry, commercial jewelry. And I was asked in 2016 by Nigel Cheney, who's a colleague at the National College of Art and Design and a textile artist, to take part in an exhibition that he was curating to celebrate the death, I have to get this right, the 400th anniversary of Shakespeare's death. And I think he thought in his head I was going to make jewelry, but it just seemed a perfect opportunity to make this. And so these are the very first icons that I made. And those of you who may remember me from college, who might be watching, there's a full circle here, because when I was in college, I was obsessed with reliquaries and that idea of small, intimate pieces that were narrative, but I'd never really gotten into it. I tried a few, and it's taken me all of this art career to feel comfortable with them now. And so I made these 5 based on 5 female protagonists from his stories. So Juliet, Goneril and Regan. There are 2, the one with the eyeballs, there actually are 2 ladies there, but one's standing behind the other. Lady Macbeth and Ophelia. And they were really well received. So it was an impetus to the 100 Women series. in between, I'm trying to stay sequential here. This is something and we're nearly at the end. I went to an exhibition with my partner that was a celebration of the Easter Rising. And it was a really wonderfully curated exhibition. But it was the first time that they highlighted the women in the Rising. All these women, we've all heard of Countess Markievicz, but I have never heard of encountering these women with amazing stories. And that exhibition was the impetus for making the series of the men, the signatories of the proclamation. But it kind of kickstarted the idea of all women, the women who we didn't know about. Some we do, some we may know about, but I wanted to just make a series of 100 that were celebrating women who maybe have been overlooked or overshadowed by their counterparts who happen to be male. So that's me right up to present. I'm getting to the end of it, but what you see on screen, and I think there's one more slide, is where I'm currently at. And when I talk to Nora, I'll show you a few, because they do flatten when they're photographed. They are quite small and intimate, and there's a 3-dimensionality to them. So that's me up to date.
Oh, thank you so much, Seliena. Such a great journey. And I feel like we're just getting started. We're just getting started here. So it's now my distinct pleasure to introduce Anne-Marie Reinhold. Anne-Marie is originally from Germany, but has called Ireland home for the past 12 years. She is currently based in Cork City, where she creates work that is inspired by the natural world. Her use of traditional metalsmithing techniques allows her to create sculptural and wearable pieces, capturing the movement and beauty of the constant flux in nature. Welcome, Anne-Marie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me and for the opportunity. So I'm going to share my screen now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my work and my journey so far. So you can see some words here which are quite important to me, and I guess I aim to have my work reflected in these words. So I'd like my work to be kind of soft and present some kind of a movement and lightness, even though I'm working in metal, which can sometimes be a bit harsh or doesn't look very soft. So that's what I'm aiming for, but also to have this movement and flux and growth shown in it. So my inspiration comes from nature. I really love being outside, and I take a lot of photos, and I collect things and bring objects back home and draw them. And so that brought me to discover the leaf shape, and you can see some samples of my first creations. And from there on, I kind of developed my work, and I really wanted to push it a little bit further. And so as you can see, it's again like the lines and the movement taken from dried petals and organic leaves. Another way I like to work is to bring those found objects like leaves or twigs and combine them with different materials. So I used some wire to create quick drawings, and they kind of inform some of my shapes also. I did some research into different surfaces, trying to explore what possibilities could there be in the exploring different surfaces within working with metal and reflecting organic surfaces also. Here you can see some more drawings of me and how I then moved on from the drawings into the objects. I also really enjoy color, and that's sometimes a little bit challenging to include when you're working in metal. But when you work in copper, you can heat treat copper, and it comes up all in amazing color. So that was I looked into that possibility also. Yeah, here you see a bit of my process. So how I create my forms. I usually start with a rough drawing, and then I pierce out my leaf shapes from a flat sheet of metal, and I shape them individually by hand and then solder each piece together. Yeah, and that led me to, by the end of my degree show, I ended up creating a body of work in fine silver and copper, making objects and wearable objects. So this is black and copper. And here you see my desk. So you can see I really enjoy bringing natural objects inside, and yeah, they really inspire me. After finishing my 4 years in the National College of Art and Design, I went to Bishopsend Educational Trust, which is a 1-year residential course. So there I kind of tried to simplify maybe my shapes a little bit to make them a little bit more wearable, but also looking at objects which had maybe a bit more of a use. So here you can see a proposal for a beaker, but also, yeah, making always references to nature. And yeah, you can see again the fluidity and lines. These were some brooches, a lot smaller than before, I created in that year as well. Here's a little tea garden, a tea light candle garden I created. So I first started again with a drawing, then had a paper maquette, and I did a few samples in copper before making the piece in silver. This was the time as well when I first discovered my love to spoons, and yeah, there were my first radish spoons, some sketches, and some copper maquettes. And these were some of the objects I made by the end of the year in silver. After finishing that course, that was one of my dreams, I guess, to do the Kilkenny jewelry skill course. Seliena did as well. And yeah, I guess in those 2 years, I really focused on jewelry, and I think I worked a lot in precious metals and precious stones also. And yeah, it was incredible, like the opportunities, and I learned so many new skills, and it's very, yeah, I had a very fantastic time. And so one of the projects within those 2 years was a museum project where we went to the National Museum of Ireland, and we had to pick an object, and so I chose a Japanese lacquerfish, and I based a body of work on that Japanese fish, and I created a series of brooches. You can see here up in that corner. The last project we did was a cocktail ring. My ring was inspired by 70s wallpaper. It had like a big pear print on it, and yeah, I really liked the colors, and so I made that cocktail ring, and then we had to make a pear box for that ring. Yeah, I think that was really my favorite part, because I really enjoy making objects, I think, or like slightly bigger scale pieces. So that brings us to where I'm at now. So I moved to Cork City after finishing the course, and I decided to set up my own business. And yeah, at the moment I'm very fortunate to say that I'm working on the commission for the museum, a spoon garden. So that keeps me busy, and also yeah, I have a range of jewelry I'm working on at the moment as well. So yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. I'm just like mesmerized. The work is so beautiful. So just touching upon your recent commission, how you were selected to create a sculptural piece in response to the COVID-19 crisis for the National Museum's permanent collection. I'm just personally curious how most of us cannot even get out of our sweatpants these days. How were you creative during COVID? What was your inspiration, and how did you keep your energy moving in that direction?
Well, I guess the idea for the museum piece came during first lockdown, actually, because yeah, it was the first time we couldn't really go outside or do much, and I had just moved to a bigger city, and I didn't have a garden, and the parks were really busy, so it kind of made me realize, oh, actually, like, it's quite a privilege to have a garden and your own access to nature. And as well, I think being outside, and a lot of people associate gardening and with something calming, and so I did want to highlight that preciousness of gardening, and what it means to me also might mean to other people, that it's kind of something which is very reliable. I guess if you are sowing something, it hopefully grows and you can harvest it. And especially in uncertain times like this, I think it's important to have something consistent, as well as the seasons, which are more or less like similar. So yeah, that was the idea behind it, to really highlight the preciousness of gardening and gardens in Ireland and everywhere, I guess. So that's how I decided to create a spoon garden. Yeah.
I love it. Just one more question. Your practice of metalwork by hand is extraordinary. Last year, the Art Institute featured a Dutch artist, Christian Meindertsma's work. And she works this work was in fiber, and and then she collaborated with tweed fabric makers in Donegal with the goal of shining a light on artisan processes that have become most alien through industrialization. Can you speak a bit to why you chose to work by hand and with these precious metals?
So I think a big part of it is that I really like to be in control, and I like working with my hands. And another thing is, I think the skills, because craft skills have been passed on over decades. And I think the special thing about it as well, that you need another maker to show you how it is done. You can't just look up a YouTube video. You can also, of course, I mean, it helps as well, but I think it's different if someone else is teaching you. And I think to accumulate all those skills, and I think it's a very special way of learning and developing as well. But I guess as well, why I like it is because I like being engaged in the process and kind of being in the zone of making and creating. And I think a lot of my work kind of develops like that as well, and it gives it a little bit of freedom and chance to grow, I think. And the reason why I like working with, for example, silver, is because you can kind of make a very white and matte surface when you raise the fine silver, so that looks very organic and soft and gentle, and that's something I really like about it. And as well, that is kind of nice about metal in general, that you have something consistent. You know, in nature everything is kind of changing, and you can't really, like, you can hold on to a leaf, but it will change and it won't stay the same. And whereas when you have something solid in metal, it kind of will last for a very long time. And I really like that idea.
Great. I think I will point out you are wearing one of your own creations on your dress there. It's beautiful. Just a housekeeping item. Those of you who can stay with us after the hour, we are going to go a little bit over time, so we make sure we can answer some of the chat questions, and we've gotten a few. But just Seliena, when researching your work, I couldn't help think that in the US, February is Black History Month. And there's been a lot of mentions of Frederick Douglass and his time in Ireland and how that influenced him. Back in 2011, Barack Obama was in Ireland and addressed 60,000 people at College Green, and was quoted as saying, when we strove to blot out the stain of slavery and advance the rights of man, we found common cause with your struggles against oppression. Frederick Douglass, an escaped slave and our great abolitionist, forged an unlikely friendship right here in Dublin with your great liberator, Daniel O'Connell. Frederick Douglass said at the time that it defined him, Ireland defined him not as a color, but as a man. In your series of women's stories, you've chosen to feature several Black activists, including Angela Davis, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman. Can you speak a little bit about how the struggles of Black Americans resonated with your history?
Yeah, it seems such a simple connection. Actually, I as I've said several times, I was born in Derry, and I am a proud Derry woman, but we have a history and a past that I'm sure most people are aware of that have any interest in Ireland, that has a struggle. And I can only speak for myself with my experience, but the resonance I see with American activists, and particularly the Black Lives Matter movement, and people like Angela Davis, and historically Harriet Tubman and Rosa Parks, was that the connection with civil rights, the civil rights movement that was occurring in Ireland and in Derry was a hotbed for the civil rights movement, led by such wonderful politicians like John Hume, who we just lost recently. And his manifesto, his mantra, was really based on Martin Luther King's idea of peaceful protest. It wasn't always peaceful because, you know, the forces of, I suppose, what you would consider the oppressor, or the British forces that would have been on the ground in Derry at the time, didn't really see it as civil rights. So there's a lot of resonance between what's happening now in the States and what happened previously. Thankfully, I have to say, we don't have, I mean, I grew up, I was born in 71, Bloody Sunday happened in 72. So my whole childhood, I am literally a child of the Troubles, and I don't want to over-egg that. I'm not using that as an excuse or as some sort of martyrdom, but it's just a fact. And so growing up, I had a wonderful growing up in Derry. I loved it. I had a great teenage years. The city was full of music. And surprisingly, although there were bombs and bullets, we had a great family. It was very important. But the civil rights movement was something that we are all very akin to and we're very aware of. It crosses, at the time, it crossed communities from Catholic and Protestant. Ivan Cooper worked alongside John Hume. They're from two different traditions, as we like to say. So that has always resonated with me, and it makes so much sense. You know, when I've highlighted some of these women, I may not absolutely agree with their politics. That's not the point. The point of my project is to highlight women who have made a difference. I don't have to agree with all of their differences or the fact of their lives, because some I don't, but they resonate with me because they've stood tall and they've put their head above the parapet, and they have, in times when it really wasn't, it's not that it wasn't fashionable, but in Ireland, I mean, feminism happened, yes, in the 60s, came to us, maybe they say everything comes to Ireland 20 years later. I mean, the church have a lot of control in Ireland and certainly had through those years. So I just really admire people who were involved in that struggle and in any struggle. So that's where the connection and the resonance between the two. And unfortunately for America, it's probably more prevalent now for you. Thankfully, we have moved on, but we still have our problems. But I think, you know, that there's been a lot of strides forward in that. But I just think we have to celebrate women. We have to celebrate everyone who makes a difference. But I particularly want to celebrate the women who have, because they did it against backlash. And, you know, it wasn't an easy ride for them. And just imagine growing up in Ireland, and most of them were mothers. Just imagine your children going out to school and things would happen on a daily basis. I can't imagine what my mother must have felt like having 2 girls going to school in an area that would have been witness to events during the Troubles. So that's the connection. It was always going to happen. And I really admire people like Rosa Parks and Angela Davies. I just admire that standing up, putting your head above the parapet. And, you know, Bernadette Devlin is someone whose politics I don't necessarily agree with, but she was, you know, we have 2 records in the Houses of Parliament in Britain that we can claim for Ireland. Countess Markievicz was the first woman elected. She may not have taken her seat, but she was the first woman elected to Westminster. And Bernadette Devlin was the youngest up until, I think, Barry Black from the SNP in Scotland. But she was 21, and it was right in the middle of the Troubles, and she took her seat and kind of fought the fight in Westminster for, you know, what was happening and the civil rights movement in Northern Ireland. So I really admire these women.
Yeah, we recently in the U.S. Reported that in the month of December, over 140,000 people left the workforce, and of that 140,000, 100% were women. And a lot of discussion is around the decades that it will take to build back up the power and equity that they have lost. In your research, do you see any parallels to the power that Irish women who fought alongside men, husbands, brothers during the Rising lost, the power that they lost after the government was established?
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, the consulate chose Kathleen Clark as the image that they, out of all of the women I've made so far, and for good reason. I mean, it's funny, in all my conversations with the people from the consulate, they never once mentioned that she was Thomas Clark's wife. It was really her own, which is wonderful, but I didn't know who she was before the exhibition that I saw in Collins Barracks on the Rising. And she was married to Thomas Clark, who's the first signatory of the proclamation. But in her own right, she was the first woman mayor and Lord Mayor of Dublin. But she went on had been, I suppose, a key part. It may be considered in the background, but a key part to her husband's activities and activities surrounding 1916, only to join the government and then feel disenfranchised. Because if I reread the proclamation last night, just I don't often do that, but I just reread it, and you know, Ireland is described in the female. It talks about equity for both sex, regardless of sex. It was a very positive document. And then they went on to form a government, and De Valera was in charge of that government, and he brought in some really horrendous backward moves against women, and it just flies in the face of what the aspiration of the proclamation was. So people like Nora, she left the government at that stage because she disagreed with, for other reasons, but that was one of the reasons. So that disenfranchisement of women who were involved must have been heartbreaking. And I mean, he brought in rules such as women couldn't work and if they were married, and that's we're still in place till very recently. My mum, and I know it's under UK laws, but that draconian laws that you couldn't work and be married at the same time. So yes, I do see that there's, and you know, even up until to today, and in reference to what's happening with Britney Spears, I mean, it's unbelievable to think that a woman, I think we all think of her as a girl and a teenager still, but a woman in her 40s can be disenfranchised of her own ability to run her life. So that doesn't say much for us as a society, but yes, I do think that a lot of the women, and even so far as how it was historically, how it's reported, I think I can't stress enough how the exhibition of Collins Barracks for me really was a redress, and by highlighting those women, Hannah Sheehy Skeffington, Dr. Kathleen Lynn, all these women, it's at least a start in us recognizing and yes, redrawing our history, because we do have to look and rethink how our history is presented to our children and the future generations.
Absolutely. I think this is officially the only event where Mother Jones and Britney Spears have been both mentioned as formative. So just, I mean, we've had several conversations and we all agree that we could probably have a symposium that would take a day to talk about everything. But in the interest of time, I wanted, the Art Institute in 2015 did an exhibition, Ireland Crossroads of Art and Design, which focused on the 1700s and 1800s decorative art. And there was a woman in the exhibition her name was Mary Delaney, and she did these gorgeous, incredible, intricate botanical cutouts, but she started her creative career at 72, and which gives me a lot of hope. And what I wanted to end on with the two of you would be suggestions of how people can stay creative in the pandemic, in this moment, and suggestions that you might have for the person who has not yet started their creative career. If you had any suggestions for us. Yeah, Marie?
I think for me, it's always like, obviously being outside and being somewhere surrounded by nature maybe, and even picking up things of beauty you enjoy and bringing them back home, taking photographs of something which you enjoy, or I guess, yeah. And also I was thinking about it, there's sometimes you don't really feel very inspired, or you think, oh, I'm not going to be able to do anything. And what helps me sometimes, I know like things are a little bit limited, but I think a lot of museums and galleries have like an online platform, so to maybe look online and to see collections of which are of interest to you, and maybe find some inspiration there, because there are still a lot of possibilities out there. So
perfect, thank you. Seliena?
Well, it just so happens that I am currently working with a group of older women on a project through Arts Care, who are based in Belfast, and work with various groups in healthcare. And the project I'm doing is that I've asked them to give me family photographs, and I've turned them into negatives. And I mentioned before my love of cyanotype. So we are working on a life's roadmap, and we're doing that through collaged cyanotypes. And I'm a big fan of low tech, and I love the ability to be able to show people projects that they can do themselves at home. They can order the supplies, or they don't need equipment, fancy equipment. So I have actually updated my website with, I've done this project of cyanotype and collage of acetates, which are literally just printed photographs in negative or positive onto acetate sheet through a laser copier. And I've updated it with some examples from the National Museum where I did it. We did it on Dublin maps and the Dublin surround. It was actually at Collins Barracks. And I have a little video there that shows, I explain the entire process, and I would encourage anyone to have a go. And what it takes away is it takes away, I can't draw, because this is about composition, having fun, experimenting, and it's an addictive process. So if you try it, you're going to love it. And it's magical. I'm still a little kid when it comes to some processes. So have a look at the website and have a look at the examples in the video and give it a try.
Great, great. And Kevin, before I turn it back to you to close, Ciara, this is just a selfish question of how can we bring some Irish design into our four walls that we've all been staring at for almost 365 days and are so bloody sick of? what are easy ways that whether in Ireland or here in Chicago, we're able to infuse a little Irish design?
Well, the Design Ireland website that I mentioned earlier, that's a really brilliant repository for all Irish design and craft, you know, and it's all the businesses that are on it are selling and shipping overseas. So Great. At the moment there's around 200, but we actually just did the call out for additional businesses. So there was around 350 applications. So I'd say it could be doubled, you know, what we have now could be doubled in the next few weeks. And along with that, we have our own, the National Design and Craft Gallery. I think the website address was up on that earlier, but we have some of the exhibitions were also, you know, because we've had to adapt and go online, the work is viewable and some of it is for sale through that medium too. I also just put in the chat box, just on your last question to Anne-Marie and Selena, just the Keep Well campaign that we have is actually really good for finding out about, you know, how to learn, you know, a new craft and things to find out about. And even on that website, there's somebody who's teaching people online how to make a Brigid's cross. So, but yeah, you can go from the Brigid's cross to the Sienna types to glass making and everything. So
great. Thank you for that. And Kevin?
Yeah, thanks Nora. Thanks everyone for your attention today. It speaks to the quality of an event that we run over and the numbers stay the same. So thanks for staying tuned with us. I just want to give a big thank you to everyone that worked on this event, particularly here in the team, Sandra and Sarah here in the team. They did so much work, so a big thanks to them. A huge thanks to Ciara. This idea came up in a conversation a couple of months ago when Ciara was actually helping us kit out the consulate with Irish design and crafts. Everything you can see behind me comes from the Design Ireland website. I think Crystal Narina is up there. We have a Joe Hogan basket in the room next door. And when we get to welcome people back into the consulate, I think you'll see you know, a lot of new things, a lot of fresh design from Irish designers. So Ciara, thank you so much for that. Massive thank you to Seliena, to Anne-Marie and to Nora. I'm not a creative, and just to hear you talk about that creative process is just phenomenal, and wonderful to hear your journeys and your stories. Seliena, I don't know if you've picked your 100 women, but Mother Jones, if you want to join us for our last event, she's definitely an inspiring person. And you know, the Britney Spears of her day. Anne-Marie, we can't wait to see your commission once it's finished. It sounds really, really exciting. And Nora, a huge thanks to you for drawing out the various themes. It was really, really wonderful. The piece at the start wasn't actually me playing the violin, obviously. It was the wonderful Liz Carroll. You'll be able to hear that back on the recording once we post it to the website. And as well, we'll send you all an email, all of you on the call, just with details of all the websites of everybody that was on the call today, and any of the other websites that were mentioned, so you can check those out at your leisure. We're also going to send on a code for you to sign up free to the event that we have next week with the Chicago Architecture Center. Same time, same place next week. Same place obviously is online, possibly in your kitchen or your spare room. But we really hope you can join us for that. That should be a great talk as well. And then just finally, just to thank you all for your attention, for your time, for your questions. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you next week, hopefully. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.